Hey everyone, ready to dive into the mysterious world of narwhals?
I'm excited to get started.
We're going deep with some excerpts from their Wikipedia article to uncover the truth about these unicorns of the sea.
I love that nickname.
All right, are they really unicorn whales? What's the deal with that crazy tusk?
So many good questions.
And how are they handling climate change in their icy Arctic home? Let's find out.
Sounds like a plan, you know? It's funny how we blend myth and reality with creatures like narwhals, but let's set the record straight. The narwhal, despite its nickname, isn't a mythical creature.
You're telling me there are real unicorns swimming around out there?
Not quite. It's a real-life toothed whale, and it's actually closely related to another Arctic resident, the beluga whale.
Toothed whale, huh? So no magical powers, just good old-fashioned teeth.
That's right. But those teeth are pretty special, as we'll see.
Okay, I'm intrigued. But wait, are you telling me narwhals and belugas are so closely related that they can actually interbreed?
Exactly. They can, and their offspring is called a narluga, a hybrid that combines traits from both parents.
A narluga. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder about the boundaries between species.
It does, doesn't it?
And speaking of appearances, their mottled skin has always intrigued me.
Oh, yeah. It's like a natural camouflage pattern, right? Adds to their mystique, for sure.
Definitely. So how does that work?
Well, narwhals are born a light gray, but as they mature, they develop these beautiful white patches, especially around their navel.
So they get whiter as they age.
Exactly. Older narwhals can even become almost entirely white.
That's so cool. Now, I can't avoid asking about the nickname corpse whale.
Oh, yeah, that one.
It does sound a bit ominous, doesn't it?
It does have a spooky ring to it, I'll admit.
So where did that come from?
Well, the name likely comes from their mottled skin, which to some resembled the paleness of a human corpse. Plus, they have a habit of logging, floating motionless at the surface, which might have added to the morbid association.
So, not as gruesome as it sounds. That's a relief.
Yeah, not quite zombie whales.
Okay, good. But now, on to the main event. The tusk. This is what really makes them stand out, right?
Absolutely. The male narwhal's tusk is iconic. And it's not a horn, by the way, but an incredibly long spiral tooth, their left canine tooth, to be precise.
Wait, so it's a tooth?
A tooth, but a truly remarkable one.
How long are we talking?
It can grow up to 3 meters long.
3 meters? That's longer than I am tall.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's hard to even picture something like that growing from a tooth.
And here's where it gets even more fascinating. That tusk is hollow and incredibly sensitive, with millions of nerve endings running through it.
Millions?
Yeah.
So what does that mean? Like, what can they sense with it?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The purpose of the tusk has been a source of debate for centuries.
So no one really knows for sure.
Well, there are a lot of theories. Some scientists believe it's used for sparring with other males.
Like a fencing match, but in the Arctic.
Exactly. Others think it might play a role in feeding, or even sensing changes in water conditions, like salinity or temperature.
So it's like a built-in thermometer and salt meter. That's wild. I also read something about the tusk being used for hunting.
You're right. Recent drone footage has actually shown male narwhals using their tusks to tap and stun small fish.
Like what kind of fish?
Like Arctic cod, making them easier to catch.
Uh-huh. So it really is multi-purpose.
Seems so. A weapon, a sensor, and a hunting tool all rolled into one.
Makes you wonder if we've unlocked all of its secrets yet.
I think there's always more to learn.
Now here's another thing that's always puzzled me. Females rarely have tusks.
Yeah, that's a great question.
So why is that?
It gets to the heart of evolution, right? If the tusk was purely for survival, wouldn't females benefit from it too?
Right, that makes sense.
The fact that they don't suggests it might be primarily a sexual characteristic, perhaps used for display or competition among males.
Like a peacock's tail.
Exactly, a way to show off and attract a mate.
Okay, let's move beyond the tusk for a moment. What other cool adaptations do narwhals have that help them survive in the Arctic?
Well, one adaptation that often surprises people is that they lack a dorsal fin.
Really? No dorsal fin? That seems like a pretty important part of being a whale.
You'd think so, right? But in the Arctic, where the ocean surface often freezes over, it's actually an advantage. Having no dorsal fin allows them to move more easily under the ice and avoid getting trapped.
Ah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like they've streamlined themselves for life under the ice.
Exactly. Their neck vertebrae are jointed, unlike most whales, giving them incredible flexibility.
Flexible necks. Why is that helpful?
They can turn their heads almost like owls. This is incredibly helpful for scanning their surroundings and hunting in tight spaces beneath the ice.
Wow. It's like having a built-in periscope. Are there any other physical adaptations that allow them to thrive in such a harsh environment?
Definitely. Remember those deep dives we talked about?
Oh yeah, I'm ready to get into those.
Well, narwhals have incredibly high levels of myoglobin in their muscles.
Myoglobin. Refresh my memory.
Myoglobin is a protein that stores oxygen, allowing them to stay submerged for long periods, even at incredible depths.
So they're like the freediving champions of the whale world,
You could say that.
holding their breath and diving deeper than most of us could even imagine? Okay, tell me about those deep dives. Where do they live and how do they survive in those icy waters?
Well, narwhals inhabit the Arctic waters of Canada, Greenland, and Russia, and each year they embark on epic migrations, following the ice-free waters as they shift with the seasons.
Imagine the navigational skills they must have to travel such vast distances.
It really is. And they don't just navigate those icy waters, they thrive in them. They have a thick layer of blubber,
How thick?
sometimes up to 10 centimeters, which insulates them against the frigid temperatures.
Wow, that's like wearing a super thick wetsuit.
Yeah.
But blubber alone can't be enough to survive those deep dives, right? I mean, we're talking about depths of over 2,000 meters, deeper than some mountains are tall.
That's right. The pressure down there must be immense.
So how do they handle it?
Along with blubber, they also have specialized muscles that help them conserve energy and tolerate the extreme cold. These adaptations allow them to dive to those incredible depths and withstand the crushing pressure.
It's a testament to their remarkable physiology, for sure. But those dives aren't without risk, are they? I've heard about narwhals becoming trapped under the ice.
Sadly, you're right. Ice entrapment is a serious threat to narwhals. And as the Arctic climate changes and ice patterns become less predictable, it's becoming more frequent.
I can imagine the desperation they must feel as the ice closes in above them, cutting off their access to air.
It's a terrifying thought.
And then there are the predators they have to contend with in those icy waters.
Right, narwhals have to be constantly on guard against polar bears and orcas.
Polar bears. How do they hunt narwhals?
They are known to wait patiently at breathing holes in the ice, hoping to catch a narwhal surfacing for air.
Yikes, that's a scary thought.
And orcas, with their speed and hunting prowess, can be even more formidable predators.
Have they been observed attacking narwhals?
They've been observed surrounding and attacking entire pods of narwhals, leaving little chance of escape.
Wow, it makes you appreciate how resilient these creatures are. They face so many challenges in that harsh environment, yet they continue to thrive. But it's not all about survival, is it? They have complex social lives too, right?
Absolutely.
Narwhals are highly social creatures.
So tell me about that. How do they organize themselves?
They live in small pods, typically consisting of 3 to 8 individuals. But these pods can aggregate into much larger groups, sometimes numbering in the hundreds or even thousands, especially during the summer months.
So it's like they have their own little communities under the ice.
Yeah, I like that way of putting it.
Are these massive gatherings just casual meetups? Or is there more to it?
There's definitely a social structure to these pods.
Like what?
You might have nursery pods with mothers and their calves.
Yeah.
Or bachelor pods with only males.
Oh, like a narwhal boys club?
Something like that. And of course, there are mixed groups as well. Each pod likely has its own dynamics and hierarchies. Fascinating. And what about that tusking behavior we talked about earlier?
Right.
Is that part of their social interactions?
Tusking, where males rub their tusks together, is thought to be a form of communication, or perhaps a way to establish dominance within a group.
So it's not always about fighting, but maybe more about posturing,
Exact.
conveying information or establishing social rank. Kind of like a secret handshake, but with a 3-meter-long tusk.
That's a great analogy.
And their communication goes beyond just tusking, right?
That's right. Narwhals are incredibly vocal creatures, using a wide range of clicks, whistles, and knocks to communicate with each other.
Now this is where my imagination runs wild. What do those sounds actually sound like?
They've been described as everything from clicks and whistles to knocks, and even squeaking door sounds.
Squeaking door sounds. Okay, that's pretty unique.
Hmm.
And what's even cooler is that their calls might be group or even individual specific, like they have their own regional dialects.
Exactly. It's fascinating to think that these whales may have unique vocal signatures that identify them within their social groups.
So we've gone from magical unicorns to toothed whales with super sensitive tusks and complex social lives. It's incredible. But I can't help but think about the future. What challenges do narwhals face in a changing world?
That's an important question.
And what can we do to protect these extraordinary creatures?
Well, As we've touched upon, climate change poses a significant threat to narwhals and their Arctic home.
So how is climate change impacting them?
The shrinking sea ice impacts their migration routes, their feeding grounds,
Yeah.
and even their ability to avoid predators like polar bears.
It's a reminder that climate change is real and that its consequences are being felt in even the most remote corners of our planet,
Is.
affecting these amazing creatures in profound ways. And it's not just climate change they have to contend with, right?
Right.
I mean, we've talked about pollution and other human impacts.
Pollution, particularly the buildup of toxins in their bodies over time, can have detrimental effects on their health and reproduction.
So even though narwhals live far from industrial centers, they're still impacted by our actions.
Exactly. Pollutants like heavy metals from industrial activities and persistent organic pollutants, those nasty chemicals that don't break down easily, can travel long distances through the air and water currents. They eventually end up in the Arctic, where they accumulate in the food web, affecting animals like narwhals.
It really highlights how interconnected our planet is and how our actions have ripple effects that we might not always see.
It does.
So what can we do? I mean, it sounds like there's a lot working against them.
Well, it's not just about the physical environment. We also have to consider the impact of human activities like shipping and resource extraction on narwhal populations.
Right, all those things add up.
Noise pollution from these activities can interfere with their communication and navigation, making it harder for them to find food and mates.
It's like we're disrupting their underwater world, their ability to communicate and sense their surroundings. It makes me realize just how vulnerable they are to our actions, even in such a remote and seemingly pristine environment.
You're right. And it's not just about protecting individual narwhals, but about preserving their entire habitat, the delicate balance of the Arctic ecosystem that supports them.
So what can we do to help?
Well, I think understanding them, appreciating their unique place in the world, is the first step towards protecting them.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today, from the myths surrounding narwhals to the very real threats they face. But I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
I agree.
There's so much more to learn about these fascinating creatures.
I think that's a good place to pause for now. We can pick up next time with a look at the latest research on narwhals and what scientists are doing to protect them.
Sounds good to me. I can't wait to dive back in.
Me neither.
Until next time, deep divers.
There's always more to uncover, and that's what makes studying narwhals so fascinating. We've talked about their tusks and how sensitive they are, but did you know that those tusks can actually reveal their feeding habits throughout their lives?
Wait, hold on. Are you telling me their tusks act like a food journal, recording what they've been eating?
In a way, yes. Scientists can analyze the different layers within the tusk, kind of like the rings of a tree, and those layers hold clues about their diet.
So how does that work?
For example, by looking at the isotopes of carbon and nitrogen in each layer, they can determine what types of prey a narwhal was eating at different stages of its life.
Isotopes. So we're talking about those tiny atoms, right?
Exactly.
I'm no chemist, but this is blowing my mind. It's amazing how scientists can extract so much information from something as seemingly simple as a tusk.
It really is incredible what we can learn from those tiny clues. And it's not just about what they ate, but where they ate it. These isotopes can even reveal whether a narwhal was feeding in shallower coastal waters or deeper offshore areas.
So it's like having a GPS tracker built into their tusks, mapping out their feeding grounds over time. That's some serious detective work. So what have we learned about their diets from these tusk analyses? What are these unicorns of the sea actually eating?
Well, it turns out that narwhals have a pretty specialized diet, mostly consisting of fish like Arctic cod and Greenland halibut. They also eat squid and other invertebrates, but fish seem to be their main staple.
I'm trying to picture them sucking up squid with those tiny mouths. I mean, they have that impressive tusk. Do they have any teeth for chewing?
They do have teeth, but not as many as you might expect for a toothed whale. Narwhals only have a single pair of small teeth, and they're often vestigial, meaning they're not really used for much.
Vestigial teeth. So like evolutionary leftovers. That's so strange. It makes you wonder what other vestigial features we humans might have lurking within us.
It's a reminder that evolution is a continuous process, and sometimes features that were once useful become less so as environments and lifestyles change.
Makes sense. But getting back to those narwhal tusks and the secrets they hold, you mentioned that they can also tell us about their exposure to pollutants, right?
That's right. Unfortunately, narwhals are particularly susceptible to bioaccumulation. which is the buildup of toxins in their bodies over time.
Bioaccumulation.
Imagine a sponge slowly absorbing toxins from its surroundings. That's kind of what happens with narwhals as they swim through Arctic waters that have been contaminated by pollutants.
And these pollutants come from various sources, right? Even though the Arctic seems so remote and pristine, it's still impacted by pollution from faraway places.
Exactly. Pollutants like heavy metals from industrial activities and persistent organic pollutants, those nasty chemicals that don't break down easily, can travel long distances through the air and water currents. They eventually end up in the Arctic, where they accumulate in the food web, affecting animals like narwhals.
So even though narwhals live far from those pollution sources, they're still bearing the brunt of our actions. It's a sobering thought, realizing how interconnected our planet is, and how our actions have consequences that reach even the most remote corners of the Earth.
It really highlights the need to think globally when it comes to environmental issues. What we do in one part of the world can have ripple effects felt thousands of miles away, impacting creatures like narwhals who have no say in the matter.
It's a reminder that we have a responsibility to protect not just our own backyards, but the entire planet, for the sake of all its inhabitants. But how do these pollutants actually affect narwhals? What are the consequences for their health and well-being?
Well, studies have shown that high levels of pollutants can weaken their immune system, making them more susceptible to diseases. They can also disrupt their hormone function, affecting their growth, reproduction, and overall health.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's like a silent threat that's slowly chipping away at their health and well-being, all because of our actions.
It's definitely a major concern for conservationists, and it underscores the importance of reducing pollution at its source and implementing stricter regulations to protect the Arctic environment from further contamination.
We've talked about their diets, their exposure to pollutants, and those incredible migrations they undertake, but I'm curious about their lifespan. How long do these amazing creatures actually live?
Narwhals are actually quite long-lived for mammals, based on studies of their tusks and teeth. Scientists estimate that they can live for 50 years or more.
50 years. That's impressive, especially considering all the challenges they face in their environment. It makes you wonder, what's the oldest narwhal on record?
While we can't say for sure, some researchers believe that females may even live to be over 100 years old.
Wow. A century in the Arctic. Talk about resilience. They've witnessed so much change in that time, from natural fluctuations in the environment to the increasing impacts of human activities.
It's incredible to think about all the knowledge and experience they accumulate over such a long lifespan. They've seen it all, from shifting ice patterns to encounters with other marine life, and perhaps even changes in the behavior of their own species.
But wait, if females can live that long, does that mean they outlive the males? I mean, those tusks must take a lot of energy to grow and maintain.
You're right. The average lifespan for males is shorter than for females. This difference in longevity is likely related to the energetic costs of that massive tusk. It's like a trade-off, a price to pay for the privilege of wielding such a remarkable weapon and sensory organ.
Ah, the price of beauty. It makes you wonder what other trade-offs exist in the animal kingdom. The delicate balance between survival, reproduction, and the demands of the environment.
It's a fascinating area of study, and one that highlights the incredible diversity of life on Earth and the remarkable adaptations that have evolved over millions of years.
Speaking of reproduction, narwhals have a fascinating breeding strategy, right? I mean, we've talked about how harsh their environment is, but they still manage to find love and raise families in those icy waters.
Yeah, they do. Unlike some whale species that breed in warmer waters, narwhals actually mate in the offshore pack ice during the spring months.
Whoa, romance in the Arctic. I never would have guessed. It's hard to imagine anything romantic about those frigid temperatures and icy landscapes.
But for narwhals, it's the perfect setting for their courtship rituals. And here's the thing. The exact details of their mating behavior are still largely a mystery.
A mystery. Come on, spill the beans.
Yeah.
I'm dying to know what goes on during these Arctic romances.
Well, we know that males compete for access to females, and those tusks likely play a role in these interactions, perhaps for display or even gentle sparring. But we're still learning about the intricacies of their courtship rituals and how mates are chosen.
So there's still a lot to uncover about the love lives of narwhals. But once they do find a mate, how long does it take for a baby narwhal to be born?
Narwhals have a gestation period of about 15 months, which is quite long compared to other mammals. That's even longer than a human pregnancy.
15 months. Wow. So they must put a lot of energy into raising their young.
They do. Female narwhals typically give birth to a single calf every 2 to 3 years, and they nurse their calves for around 20 months. Imagine the bond between a mother narwhal and her calf. She protects it, nourishes it, and teaches it everything it needs to know to survive in the Arctic.
20 months of nursing. That's a serious commitment. It shows just how dedicated narwhal mothers are to their offspring.
It does, and it highlights the importance of mother-calf bonds in their social structure.
Sure.
Calves rely on their mothers for everything in those early years, from milk to warmth to guidance as they navigate the icy waters.
I can just picture it now. A mother narwhal nudging her calf along, teaching it how to find food and avoid those lurking predators beneath the ice.
Those calves have a lot to learn in those first few years. From hunting techniques to migration routes, survival in the Arctic requires a complex set of skills, and it's up to the mother to pass on that knowledge.
It's amazing how they pass down that knowledge from generation to generation, ensuring the survival of their species. But sadly, not all calves survive to adulthood, right? The Arctic is a harsh and unforgiving environment.
Unfortunately, you're right, narwhal calves face a number of threats, including predation from those polar bears and orcas we talked about earlier. They can also become trapped under the ice, just like adults. And if their mothers are unable to provide enough milk, they can even starve.
It's a stark reminder of how fragile life can be, even for these seemingly resilient creatures. And it underscores the importance of conservation efforts to protect both mothers and calves, giving them the best chance of survival.
Absolutely. Conservation efforts are crucial for ensuring the long-term survival of narwhal populations. And there are a number of initiatives underway to address the threats they face.
Speaking of conservation, I'm curious about the relationship between narwhals and the Inuit people. We mentioned that hunting has been part of their culture for centuries. But what's the current status of those hunting practices? Are they still sustainable in today's world?
It's a complex issue that requires careful consideration of both cultural traditions and conservation goals. Inuit communities in Canada and Greenland continue to hunt narwhals for their meat, skin, blubber, and tusks. These resources have been an integral part of their culture and subsistence for generations.
And I understand that these hunts are regulated to ensure sustainability, right?
Yeah.
There must be measures in place to prevent overhunting.
Yes, there are quotas in place to limit the number of narwhals that can be hunted each year. These quotas are set based on scientific assessments of narwhal populations and their ability to withstand hunting pressure.
So it's about finding that delicate balance between meeting the needs of local communities who rely on these resources and ensuring the long-term health of narwhal populations.
Exactly. It requires ongoing collaboration between scientists, conservationists, and the Inuit people who have lived alongside these whales for millennia. Their traditional knowledge, passed down through generations, provides invaluable insights into narwhal behavior, migration patterns, and the overall health of the ecosystem.
It's a reminder that conservation isn't just about science. It's also about people and their relationship with the natural world. It's about respecting cultural traditions while also ensuring the well-being of the species we share this planet with.
Well said. And speaking of people and narwhals, their relationship goes beyond just hunting. Did you know that these whales have played a fascinating role in human history and folklore? I mean, we've talked about the unicorn myth, but their story goes even deeper than that.
Oh, I can't wait to hear about this. I'm always fascinated by how animals intersect with human culture and history. What kind of stories and beliefs have been woven around these mysterious creatures?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, narwhal tusks were once believed to be the horns of unicorns, and they were highly prized in medieval Europe. They were traded for exorbitant prices, passed off as magical artifacts with all sorts of fantastical properties.
I can only imagine the tales that were spun about those magical creatures and their supposed powers. People must have gone to great lengths to obtain these unicorn horns.
They did. Kings and queens collected them as symbols of wealth and status. Some people even believed that a narwhal tusk could cure illnesses, detect poisons, and even ward off evil spirits.
Talk about a cure-all. It's amazing how the unknown can spark such fantastical beliefs, and how a simple tusk could be imbued with such extraordinary power.
It's a testament to the human imagination and our desire to find meaning in the world around us. We see patterns, we create stories, and we imbue objects with significance, especially those that are rare and mysterious.
And in a way, it makes sense. Those spiral tusks are unlike anything else in nature. They're captivating, beautiful, and full of potential, at least in the eyes of those who didn't know their true origin.
Exactly. But as science progressed and our understanding of narwhals grew, those mythical notions gradually faded. We came to realize that these weren't mythical beasts, but real living creatures with their own incredible adaptations and behaviors.
It's a journey that reflects our evolving relationship with the natural world. From fear and superstition to curiosity and scientific inquiry, We've come a long way in understanding our place in the web of life.
And that journey continues today. We're still learning about narwhals, their lives in the Arctic depths, their intricate social interactions, and the full extent of their adaptations. Each new discovery adds another layer to their story, dispelling old myths and revealing new truths.
It's exciting to think about all the mysteries that remain to be solved, the secrets that narwhals and other Arctic inhabitants hold. It makes me appreciate the importance of continued exploration and discovery, of pushing the boundaries of our knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely. And who knows what the future holds? Perhaps we'll discover new adaptations, new behaviors, or even new species that share their icy domain. The Arctic is a vast and largely unexplored realm, full of potential for scientific breakthroughs and a deeper understanding of our planet.
It's a reminder that we live on a planet full of wonders, and that there's always more to learn, more to explore, and more to protect.
Well said. And on that note, I think it's time to transition to the final part of our deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, but there's still much more to explore, including the fascinating world of narwhal research and the ongoing efforts to conserve these incredible creatures.
I'm eager to dive into that next chapter. We've laid the groundwork, explored their biology, their history, and their challenges. Now it's time to delve into the cutting edge of narwhal science and the collaborative efforts that are underway to ensure their future in a changing world.
Let's embark on that final leg of our journey, shall we?
All right, we've explored their biology, their myths, their challenges, but now I'm really curious about what scientists are doing to protect these incredible creatures. What's happening on the front lines of narwhal research and conservation?
Well, there's a whole network of scientists, conservationists, and Inuit communities working together to study and safeguard narwhal populations.
That's great to hear. So what are some of the approaches they're taking?
They're using some pretty amazing technologies to do it, actually.
Like what?
They're using things like satellite tracking to follow narwhal migrations.
Wow, so we can actually track their movements across vast distances.
Exactly. And they're even using acoustic monitoring to listen in on their underwater conversations.
Acoustic monitoring.
Oh,
That's fascinating. So we can actually eavesdrop on their clicks, whistles, and those squeaking door sounds. What are we learning from that?
we're learning a lot. Scientists are analyzing those sounds to understand their communication patterns, how they navigate, and even how they find food.
It's like we're finally getting a glimpse into their secret world.
It really is. And on top of that, genetic analysis is helping us understand the relationships between different narwhal populations, their genetic diversity, and even their evolutionary history.
So we're not just studying individual narwhals anymore. We're looking at the bigger picture.
Exactly. How they're connected to each other and how they've evolved over thousands of years.
That's incredible. So we're using all this high-tech stuff, but what about those community-based efforts you mentioned?
Right. Their involvement is absolutely essential. You see, traditional Inuit knowledge, passed down through generations, provides invaluable insights into narwhal behavior, migration patterns, and the overall health of the ecosystem.
It makes sense. They've been observing these creatures for far longer than scientists have.
Exactly. And now, scientists and conservationists are working closely with Inuit communities to combine that traditional knowledge with modern scientific methods.
So it's a true collaboration.
It is, and it's leading to more effective conservation strategies.
That's fantastic. What are some of the specific things that are being done to protect narwhals?
Well, there are a number of initiatives underway, from establishing marine protected areas to reducing pollution in the Arctic.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
It is. They're also working with communities to ensure sustainable hunting practices.
It sounds like a lot is being done, but are there still challenges?
There are. Climate change remains a major threat, and we need to find ways to mitigate its impacts on narwhal populations.
That's a big one, for sure.
It means reducing greenhouse gas emissions globally and finding ways to adapt to the changing Arctic environment.
It's a daunting challenge, but one we can't ignore. Narwhals are such a unique and important part of the Arctic ecosystem.
They are, and I think protecting narwhals isn't just about safeguarding a single species. It's about preserving an entire way of life.
For both the narwhal and for the people who depend on the Arctic ecosystem.
Exactly.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up our deep dive. We've learned so much about these incredible creatures.
We have, from their unique adaptations to their complex social lives to the threats they face.
It's been an amazing journey, and I hope our listeners feel inspired to learn more about narwhals and to support conservation efforts.
I second that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the unicorn of the sea.
Until next time, deep divers.